put the slideshow on. Thank you for the introduction, Kathleen. It's nice to see that on screen, actually. It's cool, thanks. Okay, open access, September 2021, October 2021. Not a lot happened between September and October. Now, what I would like to start with is to give you a basic understanding of publishing models in general. There are two routes to publish your scientific content. One is you pay to read, and the other one is you pay to publish. Pay to read is the subscription model. You're all high-profile professionals, high-profile scientists, and you most likely have access to the largest volume of scientific content in Science Direct. All of that your institute pays a subscription fee for. That is pay to read. There's no cost to you. There's no, it's easy. That is the subscription model. About 20 years ago, just under 20 years ago, a movement came about in Eastern Europe. That's where it started. Predominantly at that time driven by scientists also from West Europe, the Western Europe, where they said everything that is paid for by taxpayers' money, that is paid for by funders, should be immediately available to everybody without the need for a subscription. And that became Gold Open Access. That means that you don't pay to read, you pay to publish. This means that somebody pays a fee, funders, individuals, institutions, an article publishing charge upfront to cover the cost of publishing, to cover, in fact, the whole process. So from a quality point of view, Gold Open Access and subscription are identical. Whenever you submit to a title, peer review happens, we typeset, we do everything that is the same for Gold Open Access and subscription. The accessibility differs though. For subscription, you need a subscription, pay to read, and for Gold Open Access, it is free to all in perpetuity. I already briefly touched upon this. Who are the drivers between Gold Open Access? Mostly funders, institutions, and governments. Publishers, some of them were early to the game, some of them were a bit later to the game. I can safely say now that the whole of the publishing industry, in some shape or form, supports both Gold Open Access and subscription, or better to say, subscription and Gold Open Access. Researchers, it still shows from all the surveys we do, and being the largest scientific publishing house in the world, Elsevier does a lot of research, a lot of user surveys, a lot of author and researcher surveys, and it is actually still the quality of the title, the speed of the publication that drives authors to a certain journal, not so much the publishing model. You are all affiliated with institutes, and at that institute you have access to the high quality content you need to do your research, to do your work. So researchers are still not knocking on our door saying we must have Gold Open Access. Funders, institutes, and governments are really the drivers behind Gold Open Access. And of course, it's something we fully support, because there is a clear need in the market. The idea really is that if you make your content accessible to all, more people can use it, and it has a greater value to society. As you can see, over time, it is just growing. Subscription is still growing as well. However, we see that Gold Open Access, as in sponsored or author paid, subsidized, that is really the bulk of the growth. This is a nice map of examples of funder mandates. We have thousands of funder mandates, funders across the world, and they all have their own dedicated mandate. Some of them say you must use a certain license. Some of them say you're no longer allowed, if I funded your research, then you're no longer allowed to use subscription. You must pay gold open access. The nice thing is then that they'll also pay that article publishing charge. So this is just a picture of the world where it showing that there are many, many different mandates. And later on in my presentation, I'll show you how we would match you based on your funder and your affiliation. Will give you full transparency about what's relevant to you, which publishing model is relevant to you. Elsevier and open access. At Elsevier, we have 2 user licenses, and I haven't mentioned licenses yet. So gold open access means somebody pays an article publishing charge, and Elsevier opens up the article at the point of publication in perpetuity. Now, you as an author also choose a user license, a license that tells other readers what they can do with the work or what they can't do with the work, and make sure that you as authors get the credit you deserve because it is your work. Now, there are 2 licenses Elsevier uses, and by and large, there's 6 to 8. Creative Commons licenses, we call them. The CC BY is the most liberal license there is. It means that any Tom, Dick, and Harry can use your work as long as they accredit you. They can use it for commercial purposes. They can use it for non-commercial purposes. They can put it in the database. They can make a derivative out of it. It's the most liberal license. It means, for instance, that if you decide to publish gold open access under a CC BY license, you might see your content used in an app tutorial for a product. That is how liberal the CC BY license is. The CC BY and C&D license is a very restrictive license. It means that you can't use it for commercial purposes. As a reader, the non-commercial, you can also not turn it into a derivative, ND. CC BY, non-commercial, non-derivative. It is far more restrictive. From a reader's point of view, it's identical because you have access to the content as a reader because it's gold open access in perpetuity from the point of publication with a CC license. This is a short summary of what you can do with it. And Kathleen, my assumption is that we're going to share a large part of this presentation with the audience later on. So you can just look into this. There's my email address on the last slide as well. So if you have any questions, happy to take those after the meeting as well. So we've mentioned subscription now, and we've mentioned gold open access, immediately available to all at the point of publication. There's another aspect in the world of gold of open access, which is green open access. And green open access is a parameter, is a characteristic of subscription publishing. It means that you choose subscription, so you need a subscription. Your readers need a subscription to access your work. However, you can open up your accepted manuscript after an embargo period. And this embargo period varies from field to field. By and large, it's between 12 and 24 months. 12 to 24 months after we've published the article under subscription, you can deposit your accepted manuscript in a repository with a CC BY and C&D license. So that allows readers to access your content without a subscription. They just have to wait a bit. Open access opened up a world of possibilities in a way. What we've seen over the last 15 to 20 years is that new article types, shorter article types, more descriptive article types came to the scene. And we see that a lot of those articles, a lot of those journals are pure gold open access journals. So not hybrid, where you can choose between gold and subscription, pure gold open access, everything is OA. We're talking about research elements journals, like Data in Brief, a journal whereby we curate the data you've used for your research. You can also provide updates later on. And of course, it's all digital, e-only. Methods, hardware, it says it all. The titles give you a good description of what is in the articles. What we see is that when you use your data, when you publish your data, your article, your research gains visibility. It also makes it more reproducible. And that is an important part in the whole story, because reproducibility becomes more and more important to get to show the value of the work you've done. If you can't reproduce your work, people will question your work. So whenever you write an article, make sure that there's always enough information in there to reproduce your research and get the same results under the same circumstances. Now, what do we do as Elsevier? And this is what a lot of publishers do, of course. We try to make it as transparent as possible to any reader, whether they're looking at a subscription article or whether they're looking at an open access article. And this is especially important when you don't have a subscription to the content. On Science Direct, we tell you exactly what is open access. I've also included a number of slides on sharing. So what do? We try, outside of gold open access, with knowing that there is green open access where you can share your accepted manuscript after an embargo period. There are also sharing links, for instance. It helps you to share your work. We are dedicated at Elsevier to help you to do so. The more people who can read your work, the more known your work is, and you will attract other good researchers to collaborate with. This is a way to market your own research. There are sharing guidelines. We tell you exactly what can you do with your preprint, after acceptance, after publication, and after embargo. By and large, if you have the funds, if you have a mandate, if your institute is part of a commercial agreement telling you that you can publish gold open access, and there is no issue with funding, gold open access is the way to immediately share your research with the rest of the world. These are the share links I mentioned. That is, again, a parameter of subscription whereby you can share your research in a 50-day period. You don't need to sign up. You don't need to register. It is open to all. After the 50 days for a subscription article, it goes in the subscription database. What do we do at Elsevier? We have something we call publishing options, and a publishing option has to do with transparency. It tells you exactly what is relevant to you. When you are part of a group of researchers, one of you will be the so-called corresponding author. The corresponding author who takes the article, submits it to a title, peer review happens, you communicate with the reviewers, and after acceptance, in a hybrid title, a title that publishes both gold and subscription, we will tell you exactly this is relevant to you. And that's what we mean by publishing options. We do these publishing options, the transparency, this is relevant for you, all the way in the complete end-to-end journey. We start in Journal Finder, and if you already give us your affiliation in the Journal Finder, then we will tell you, hey, because you are, for instance, affiliated in this case with the General Hospital at the Medical University of Vienna, we have a commercial agreement with a number of Austrian affiliations. You can publish gold open access for free, without free of charge. We do the same during submission. So after you've selected a title, you start submitting, and again, we'll ask you what is your affiliation? Where are you as a corresponding author affiliated? If you then are affiliated, again, with an affiliation that takes part in a commercial agreement, and we have a lot of them in Western Europe, we have a lot of them in Eastern Europe as well, and we see a growing number of commercial agreements in North America as well, then we'll tell you, because you are affiliated with, you can publish Gold Open Access free of charge. In the price box on the right-hand side, you can see the article publishing charge, and you can also see that there's an institutional agreement discount. In other words, you pay zero. It's all covered for you. You can still publish under subscription, because Elsevier is a firm believer in academic freedom, and you decide how you want to publish your article. We do this by matching you with your affiliation, and we do exactly the same in the post-acceptance journey. So after acceptance, we will tell you what you selected during submission, and then you can make up your mind. Do you want to stick to the choice you made during submission, or would you rather go for the other publishing model? We will also ask you, what license do you want to use when publishing Gold Open Access? So here the scenario is you've selected Gold Open Access. In this case, in the presentation, it means you don't need to pay it as an individual author because there's an institutional agreement in place. We'll also then ask you under which license, how do you want other readers to reuse your work? Then we'll ask you to handle copyright, and the default for Gold Open Access at Elsevier is you as an author retain copyright. In case of subscription, you transfer the copyright. For Gold Open Access, whether it's in a hybrid title, so a title with two models, or a Gold Open Access journal, you as an author retain copyright. There are, we know, a number of society titles where the society owner still insists on authors transferring copyright even under the Gold Open Access model. That's not the industry standard and is not the default at Elsevier. We tell you this is what you're signing up for. You finish, you've selected Gold Open Access, and within 24 hours, the article becomes Gold Open Access on Science Direct, and it will stay like that in perpetuity. What's next? Because that is a question Kathleen asked me. What is the future of publishing? What do you see on the horizon? Well, the good thing is that I don't have a glass ball. None of us have a glass ball. What I can tell you is based on the experience my team and I have with journal indexation, that we see a number of very strong writings on the wall, and it's all about quality. In this age, in this day and age, where we have so much fake news, where our work, your work, is discredited, and we have to really make a stand as a scientific community to show that what we do makes sense. It adds to making the world a better place. It is all about quality. And then the question is, how do you prove quality? How do you show quality? It's consistency and predictability. And all of this comes from my experience with journal indexation. The indexation services, Clarivate, where you potentially, as a journal, might get an impact factor. ESCI, which is also Clarivate, which is also part, it's sort of the waiting hall for an impact factor. PMC, Medline, DOAJ, Scopus, you name it. It's all about consistency and predictability. So when you select a journal to publish in, make sure that you check out the journal. You know that they are publishing according to the industry standards. Now, at Elsevier, you can be pretty sure about that. And the other big publishing houses, same thing. There are also a lot of dodgy journals on the market. So keep your eyes open and go for a journal that is consistent and predictable to a certain extent. Reproducibility, talked about that already. It means that under the same circumstances, you get the same research output. Somebody can do your research again, and you've given them the information to do so. It's also ethical behavior, and that is an incredibly important one. It means that you give full transparency as a researcher. Who funded your research? Are there any conflict of interest? Is there anything we should know about you, your work, that might influence the review period, the review process, that might influence how I, as a reader, view your work? Be transparent about who you are and where you get your money from to do the research. Predictability and consistency. This is more than anything a journal parameter. So if you ever become an editor, for instance, for a journal, maybe for one of Kathleen's journals, and you want to get indexed, you want your journal to get indexed in an indexation service, you want your journal to get an impact factor, you as an editor, and now we're switching roles, you're no longer an author, I've now promoted you to an editor. It's something you really want to do. It's a nice job, by the way. It's really cool to be an editor on a journal because it allows you to see early work, early research in an early stage. As an editor, you have to make sure that you do as it says on your own tin. You are the guardian of your aims and scope, and what you publish needs to fit within that aims and scope. Then the individual articles need to have this reproducibility information, and that can go quite far. We've had conversations with Medline, for instance, where they said, the research is with rats. Where is the batch number of the rat food they've been consuming? We need to know. It needs to be absolutely reproducible. You need to give other researchers, your readers, everything they need to reproduce the research and get to the same result under the same circumstances. And then finally, it's about ethics. And you, as an author, are pivotal in this. Make sure that when you submit an article, when you go through the publication process, you give us the declaration of interest. You make sure that there's an informed consent. You make sure that you think about inclusion and diversity when you create your research groups. It's all about being transparent. Ethics are getting more and more important, especially in these days and age. What I've done in the presentation is give you a lot of additional guidelines, a lot of additional information for you to look at a later stage. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll try to answer your questions. So for now, I would like to thank you. It is 25 minutes later than when I started. You've got my email address here. Kathleen will share the presentation. Let me know what you would like to know.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lydia. That was very informative. I especially like how you broke down what constitutes quality. It's a word that we often throw around, but really having a clear definition can be helpful when choosing the correct journal. So that was wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to take over the screen share again, just right quick. Go. Lydia's information once again, and as she had said, this will be available both for Elsevier and on ESWN's webpage with the recording and the slides. So please do look for that there. If there was any other further details that you had wanted, any details you'd hope to glean from the slides, you'll be able to do that there. So moving forward, we'd love to take some Q&A. This is just our stay in touch page. You know, we'd love to hear from you. We have Elsevier Energy at Elsevier Energy for Twitter, and we're also on Facebook. But let's talk about ONA questions. Does anybody have anything that they would like to ask Lydia or the team at large? All right, I'm not seeing any questions right yet. Don't be shy. We are happy to answer them. One question I have for you, Lydia, one thing that I hear a lot from authors is, all right, I have a set amount of money that I've been given in a grant for a paper. I would like to publish OA, but my institute isn't going to cover the funding. You know, they're not going to pay for the APC. So what is something that you would suggest people do in that case where they feel like they have limited funds and there isn't a reciprocal arrangement with the university? Is there a way that they could get a discount or apply for some sort of help with the APC at all?
We have a policy at Elsevier, the open access waiving policy. And if you as a researcher did not get any funding whatsoever, and you can provide a statement from your institute that they are not willing to pay the APC, then we will waive the fee. If you have any sort of research funding, we expect you as an author to make sure you've allocated a budget to pay the APC. If that is not available because you've used your research budget for other purposes, which makes a lot of sense, go for a hybrid title where you can publish subscription free of charge. We have a vast array, and they're also in your portfolio, Kathleen, of high quality hybrid titles. You publish under subscription free of charge, and you make use of the sharing options like the share links and green open access.
That's a great answer. And I hope that does clear things up for people a little bit. Another question I have is, we're at Elsevier, as you know, starting to focus more about the global south. Are there any discounts available for people who are applying or trying to submit papers from disadvantaged countries or economies?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Elsevier is one of the founders of a program called Research for Life. And Research for Life was originally set up to grant the global South research communities access to subscription content for free or a highly discounted rate. We are now using the same methodology to apply waivers and discounts for those same authors. What we do need to understand is that we look at the complete author group. So say you have one author from Nigeria, you've got one author from Kenya, and you have two authors from Belgium. Then the article does not qualify for a Research for Life waiver because we look at the complete author group. So if the whole author group is from a country or from countries that are all part of Research for Life, we will apply a waiver, and we'll do that in an automated way. So authors don't need to think about anything. It is part of their publishing options.
That's good to know about looking at it as a group and not just individual authors. That's important. Another question that I feel like is useful with OA is, by publishing OA, does that give the article any advantage? Have we seen, for example, higher citation rates for open access articles versus subscription, or does it not play a role?
We have clearly seen a higher download rate for articles that are available outside of the subscription portfolio. And we see a slightly higher citation rate. We have to be honest, though, there is a bias in the system. At the beginning of my presentation, I explained that open access is driven by funders, by institutes, and by countries. So who are the authors who get the grants with a mandate to publish gold open access? Quite often the high quality authors who would have gotten most of the citations anyway. So we have to be very careful that there is a bias in the system. So by and large, we don't see a massive difference we don't even see a big difference in whether in citations, whether you publish gold or subscription. We do see it in the downloads. And for the researchers in the seminar, in the call, I would urge you to make sure that you add a layman's summary to your research. I always say I've got a master's in history, and I think I understand about 0.005% what's on Science Direct. I might get the occasional verb, I get some particles, and I might get an adverb or an adjective. But by and large, Elsevier is not a history publisher anyway, and we don't do history, we do science, technology, engineering, and maths. Those are not my fields. I live with a gentleman, I've been living with him for the last 23 years, I think, yeah. He's got a PhD in IT. He might get 0.5% of what's on Science Direct. And he's super smart. The thing is, it's not his field. He can look at a paper in your field and think, yeah, that's interesting. He might get a tiny bit more. He might get the equations. But by and large, we really want to get our research out there, if we really want the world to understand how valuable our research is and what the world can do with it, add a layman's summary. Just pretend you're talking to a 12-year-old niece or neighbor, or bring it down to a level we all understand, and then your research will have an even greater impact.
Excellent. Thank you, Lydia. That's very helpful. I think that's really true too. A lot of times, having that abstract can make a really big difference, and it can make a difference if that article is then picked up in some of our article digest readers, or is then, selected to sometimes even science writers or journalists, with New York Times or something. If you have an abstract in there that's accessible to lay people, it does increase the reach of the article. We have seen that definitely. So,
exactly, and make it simple for journalists. They don't like to read. Make it simple.
Exactly. All right, Mona, do you have any questions that you feel like we could address?
Yes, thanks for asking, Kathleen. Actually, I do have a couple of questions, but before I ask, I wanted to see if Christine has a question or two. Christine, did you want to chime in or say anything?
No, thank you, Mona. The questions I had, particularly about resources for those who can't afford open access, were already answered. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Lydia, your presentation was enlightening. Thanks again. So a couple of questions that as you were talking about diversity, inclusion, making sure that your science is accessible to a wide variety of audiences, it made me think, what do editors do to facilitate that exchange between the academic and expert community and the broader audiences? Does open access have, because by spirit it would mean that science is open and accessible, and people who are non-experts can actually participate in this scientific exchange process as extended members of our peer community. So how are journals facilitating that role in which you're making science accessible to a wide variety of audiences, maybe even those who cannot probably afford the gold or platinum level? So if you could shed some light on that, that would be great. And my second question, I'm gonna just take a moment to ask you that too. You can answer whenever it's possible or not. But in light of COVID, science was being facilitated at a pace that was that we haven't seen before. So if you could share some of your experiences in terms of best practices, challenges, and opportunities that you saw in the scientific exchange publishing world during COVID, I think that would be incredibly useful to all of us. Thanks again.
Yeah. So when it comes down to diversity, I'll try to answer your first question first, is that we really stimulate editorial boards to be more inclusive. And we need that. And it's such a joy to see 4 women here on the screen, in all honesty. Now, it's not just about gender, it's also about color, it's about your ethnic background, it's your education level, it's your interest. Diversity covers a broad array of aspects. Intersectionality, it's important. We need to know that discrimination, pushing people out, can happen at many different levels. And that is where, as Elsevier, we continuously educate editorial boards to say, if you want to be the best journal you can be, you have to make sure you include everybody, not just people who look like you, who talk like you, because if you cut out half of the world, if you cut out 50%, as in all women, from a statistical point of view, you can't tell me you've got the best people. You need to make sure you actively search for top researchers in different parts of the world. One thing we quite often hear from Medline and from Clarivate is that a journal calls itself international. And then if you look at the board of editors, the editorial board, they're all from North America, and there might be 2 from Canada. There's nothing international about that. America's a country. If you say you're international, you need to have people from across the world. And sometimes you need to look a bit harder to find that diverse group of people that are really going to bring another perspective to your research and to your journal. So does that answer your question, Mona?
I was, so I truly appreciate your comments. I guess I was also more interested in learning about ways in which journals facilitate the exchange between experts and non-expert community through open access publishing. Is that exchange being done? Because the spirit, once again, of science being open, where extended members of the community, basically non-experts, can participate as our extended peer reviewers, is that being facilitated by open access in some way?
It is facilitated by publishing in general. Elsevier, and Kathleen can speak to that as well, is involved in a number of experiments to do open peer review, to make sure that more people can participate, blinded peer review, open peer review. So yes, Kathleen, maybe you can speak to this as well, because it directly involves journals as well and publishers.
Yes, definitely. So one thing that we have a lot of internal projects that are trying to facilitate sort of a wider diversity of not just authors, but also researchers and reviewers, because that's important as well. And sometimes a missing piece in this, as we seek to increase submissions and participation globally, we also need to remember that if all of our reviewers all look the same and are from the same area, then that can cause problems too. So we actually have a number of internal initiatives that are trying to, address this, and OA is certainly a part of it. I think that it's happening in hybrid and submission journals too. So people shouldn't feel like if they want to submit to a submission, regular subscription journal or to a hybrid journal, they shouldn't worry that this isn't happening there as well. It is across everyone. And I think our publishers are very personally invested in trying to create a more equal playing field as well, especially when it comes to inclusion and diversity. There is an inclusion and diversity champion on each of our publishing teams, and we really look for ways to sort of mitigate this historic problem.
Thank you both.
Okay.
Great. Well, if nobody has any other questions, then I think that we can probably leave it here for now. Please feel free to reach out to any of us. Lydia had provided her email previously that was in slides. And like I said, we have at Elsevier Energy, and Facebook and ESWN has their social medias as well. So please reach out if you feel like you have a question after the fact. You know, we'd love to hear from you, and we are happy to answer further questions. And thank you for joining and taking time out of your day, wherever in the world you were. If you enjoyed this, we will be having another session November 17th, and that is going to focus specifically on diversity in publishing. So feel free to join us and continue to follow our media channels for updates on registration for that. So if there's nothing else, then thank you everyone so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.